Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday Tablas Creek Instagram Live broadcast. I am Jason Haas, as always. My guest this week will be the great chef, cookbook author, philanthropist, podcast host, Top Chef host, Hugh Acheson from Athens, Georgia. But while we wait for people to join, as I usually do, I want to give you a little tour of what's going on at the vineyard. These photos, as they were for the past few weeks, have been taken by Ian Consoli, our director of marketing out at Tablas, because I am in Vermont, as you probably still gathered from my background. This is the back deck of the house that I grew up in. I'm here visiting family and soaking in the green grass and the running water. So Ian jumped in to take some pictures. So let me show you what's going on at the vineyard. The big visual news is that we have veraison. This is the time of year when the grapes go from green to red. That's visibly what's happening. But it also is the time where physiologically they go from accumulating mass to accumulating sugar. So this is actually the largest that they are. They get a little smaller by the time that you get to harvest. And we've seen veraison in Syrah, and in, it's a little harder to see in the whites, but also in Viognier. The berries start to get a little more yellow rather than true green. They start to soften and start to sweeten up. But it's worth remembering that veraison is not a thing that happens all at once. It's not like you wake up one morning and your whole vineyard all of a sudden goes from green to red. This is a picture of what Grenache looks like right now. And Ian estimated that he saw maybe 5% of Grenache clusters that had a little bit of color. And all the rest are still green. So Mourvèdre and Counoise, those are all still green. We're going to see things go through veraison over the next couple of next 3-4 weeks probably. I'll write a blog when I get back to the vineyard next week that'll show you where everything is at. So if that's something that's of interest to you, stay tuned. Again, we will be joining Hugh Acheson, chef and restaurateur and author, in just a moment or two. But while we wait for everybody else to join, a few more pictures. What's going on in the cellar? So we are currently waxing magnums. So this is Amanda Weaver. We have to wax all of the magnums by hand because it's a process that isn't really easily automatable, but it's always a fun thing. We just bottled the Esprit de Tablas and the Panoply from the 2019 vintage. So those are the magnums of those. We're also getting ready for harvest. It's still probably 6 weeks out, but stocking up, ordering our annual barrels for the year. We got all of 8 of these new barrels. We're not a big new oak house. But the fun thing is that this is a Sylvain barrel that is made from an entirely biodynamic process. We got a few of those barrels last year and loved them. We got another 8 this year. Couple other things to note while we're here. First of all, we've been working on our biochar. This is a great way of turning woody material into a soil amendment and also minimizing your emissions, both particulate and CO2. So that's our little biochar burner. There's a cool blog that Jordi Lonborg wrote last year if you're interested in the process. And then finally, we are planting one of the blocks that was an original Mourvèdre block for us that we pulled out a couple years ago and have let lie fallow. We are calling this the Santos Espinosa block after our original assistant nursery manager who was a part of our crew for almost 30 years before he passed away a couple of years ago. So this is one of the new little Mourvèdre vines that are going into that block, and we'll have some new Mourvèdre in a few years. So that's a quick snapshot of what's going on at the vineyard. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to invite Hugh to join me. I see him there. So I've sent the and then we can catch up. I'm super looking forward to this. Okay, a request went out to you. I am assuming that he will join momentarily since he sent the request to me originally, but it has not started yet. So let me see if I have another picture or two to share while we wait for him to arrive. Um, Something fun that's going on, our staff garden. So that is the garden that we use to really to just produce some great produce for our own team and um, for use at the winery. So you can see things are starting to get ripe. Always fruit trees, and then corn and tomatoes and tomatillos. It says Hugh Acheson is unable to join. I'm going to send another request. Let's see if it works this time. Sometimes that's a connectivity thing, depending on where his Wi-Fi state is. So just send out another request. So, um, and then just wanted to show you something else that I thought is kind of cool. This is not happening at the vineyard, but this is what we've been doing here in Vermont. We have been trying to work our way through some of the treats in the cellar that my dad built over the years. So this includes old Burgundies like this Domaine de l'Ombre, Maurice Saint-Denis, and it includes a really incredible meal that we had a couple of nights ago, where we opened two of the real Burgundy treasures, a 70 Petrus and a 61 Lafitte. Those of you who are unfamiliar with my dad's history, he was an importer before he founded Tablas Creek, and represented Lafitte and Petrus all through the 60s and into the 70s. So um, it was a real pleasure. The wines were in beautiful shape, and it's just an honor to be able to dive into these and dive into these legendary wines. Okay, I saw another note that Hugh was unable to join. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'll try one more time for the invitation. Let's see if this works. Hugh, if you're hey,
Oh
there
my
we
God,
are!
it worked! It worked! I am a
Hooray!
Luddite! Okay.
Excellent. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I say I'm pandemically fine.
Pandemically fine. That covers a wide range of possibilities.
It
Like
does.
it cuts off the like absolute disaster at one end, but doesn't really imply that the last year and a half have been everything that you dreamed it would be. Um,
I don't think it has been for anyone, and I feel very blessed that we got through this relatively unscathed, and all of my crew and my people and my family are healthy, and that's the best we can do right now.
Honestly, if that's where you are, that's sort of where we are, and I feel like that's something to be grateful for.
And we're making food, and you're making wine, so this continues.
So the way that I like to start is just to ask people sort of how they got into doing what they're doing. So I mean, you are. I think people might be surprised to know that there are a lot of chefs who are not really all that interested in wine. You definitely are not that chef. One of the things that I've always been super impressed with is the degree to which you yourself engage with your wine program and direct your wine program around the food that you make. Um, how how did you get into food and wine? Did you know you wanted to be a chef when you were growing up? What was your path?
No, I come from a very academically gifted family, and I was like the black sheep, and I didn't really like school. I dropped out of university later on, but at 15, I found myself in kitchens, and I loved it. It was the place where I belonged and felt a sense of worth that I couldn't get from school and other things, and I loved working, and so I was the kid who was 17 and an associate in a French restaurant and working 40 hours a week after school. And, eventually I came to work in better and better restaurants and some really lousy restaurants. But I remember working at a really old school French place in Hull, Quebec. It was there for like 90 years, and then it shut down probably about 10 years ago, called Café Henri Berger, or Henry Burger. Did not sell burgers. And amazing kitchen, amazing people, beautiful old school French place. And they had this Senegalese bartender sommelier who he would kind of steer me in the right direction. Like, yeah, well, you want to try this, you want to do this, go to the store and buy this. And so it's been a small part of my paycheck just on figuring out interesting wines, figuring out what the Medoc meant and right bank versus left. And then started taking wine courses while still, chefing, and eventually opening up my first own restaurant in 2000. I mean, I worked at Gary Danko, some places with really revered wine programs. Um, but, coming to Athens, Georgia in 2000 to open up 5 and 10, I was like 26 years old. I didn't know crap, but I felt it really was important to do everything at the restaurant and to understand the numbers and how things worked. And so we built a really good wine program. And nobody thought that that was necessary in Athens, Georgia. But I was like, whatever. It's an inventory cost. We'll handle it. And so we started to get attention for that. And slowly but surely, but we had to write these crazy wine lists with these weird comments next to it because they didn't have enough money to afford a real somm on the floor, and there wasn't one to hire in Athens anyhow. So slowly, so these big, massive 8.5 by whatever 17 or whatever wine lists with 400 wines on it, with each one having a little dorky comment like so and so made this wine, you should love it, or a whimsical little narrative just to steer and give them a little bit more information. But wine's like food to me. It's like it's why I'm in this business. I'm kind of ADD a little bit. Wine and beverage, but wine specific, and as it relates to food, it's an endless topic. I can learn something about it every day for the rest of my life, and so it positions me as this incessant learner. And that's kind of the key, I think, to thriving in hospitality, is when you don't position yourself as an expert, though we're experts in our field, and I understand that, but I want to position myself as a learner. So wine is just this endless fascination of what you can do with the simplicity of a grape that goes through a fermentation process, but there's so many nuances from A to B that you have to learn, and then impacts of terroir and all these things come into play, and it's just, to me, it's endlessly fascinating.
I could not possibly agree more with that. And that's one of the things I think that makes what I get to do so much fun, is that I feel like there isn't a day that goes by that I don't learn something new about even the wines that we make and the grapes that we grow. And the idea that what you're making is always kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. I mean, you never have a vintage that's exactly the same as one that you've already had. Your raw
Yep.
materials start out a little bit different, but plus a little bit more than you did the time before. And so it's this sort of iterative process that you go through and make something which is it's kind of built on the shoulders of what you've done before, but it's not a copy. It can't possibly be a copy because you didn't have the same raw materials to start with. And
Yeah.
it's
And I think that's a decidedly the gestation of that in wineries, in constant learning and constant improvisation, is a very American thing. Now it's spread around the world now, but the French aren't like that. I mean, the
right.
French, this was the style, and this is what we're going to do, and God damn it, we're going to do it 6 generations from now in this exact same way. And that's fine, but in cooking is the same way as with how you're running the vineyard. Is I want to learn constantly and think my food is not going to be the same as 10 years ago. I've learned a lot more, and so we're pushing my own personal boundaries on what food can be now, and it's more contemporary. In the same way that I think your wines are not the same now as they were 10 years ago. It doesn't mean they're not great 10 years ago. It just means they're very different now. They're different style, and the way our palates want different styles of wine is really abundant. But Tablas Creek to me is so amazing just because it's like this library of knowledge about Rhone varietals that's so important to keep those varietals there, and having a really great program to graft them into these California climates where they can do so well. And so it's always been fun, but to watch you guys grow and do what you do. And I'm one of your Vinsiders.
Thank you. We are very honored to have you as a part of the Tablas Creek family.
I signed up years ago. But yeah, it's always great fun to be on that wine program. Just because you get an older Esprit and you get a new Esprit, and it's just like then you can taste them side by side. And it's just like, this is cool.
Awesome. So I think one of the things you mentioned was interesting. Just the way that you felt like you had to build your wine list with kind of entry points for people into what those wines are. that feels way ahead of its time. I mean, if you were doing that back in 2000 when you opened up 5 and 10, I feel like that's maybe something that the restaurant and some community have sort of been talking about for the last 5 years as a really big deal, an important thing for helping people take that first step into wines they might not already know that they like. Did you feel like you were being a pioneer in when you were doing that?
No, I think I was teaching myself as much as I wanted to teach the customer. It's not like 5 and 10 didn't have good food before, but we kind of changed the dining scene here because it's a small town and
Yeah.
it didn't really have much in the way of fine dining. And we wanted to be community fine dining. So it was having to teach people about food. And, it helps that food television predated, Emerald taught everybody about arugula, which was great. It made my life easier. Um, but in that way, I needed to create a wine program where people felt at ease. I could have done the big leather bound book with tons of vintages of, DRC and stuff like that at exorbitant prices. But you have to segue into the community you're in and understand the knowledge base there. It's not that people weren't excited about wine, their exposure to it was a little more limited.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of make them feel comfortable with it. But if you're pouring an amazing, Vermentino or a Viognier by the glass, in a setting such as Athens, Georgia in 2000, you have to have a story. You can't just pour it and think there's an expectation that they're going to love it. And also selling anything, if you've got a narrative, if you've got the true authentic story about where it's coming from and what it means to you, I think that that's what we're looking for in all things, is just
Yeah.
pure authenticity. And so we didn't want to fake it, and I didn't want to talk down to people, but I knew I had to teach people and teach myself. So that was the format, and in a lot of ways, it hasn't really changed from that. We're really excited about all the wines we pour, but if we don't know the story, then we're not selling what it really is. I mean, wine, like an amazing food product, is immediately from somebody's vision, and it's about their toil and struggle with nature to get there. And if you don't understand the beauty of that story and how hard somebody's worked in Beaujolais to produce an amazing Gamay, then you're missing the point about relishing in these things. I also wanted to make sure that there's no such thing as cheap wine in our programs. There's plenty of inexpensive wine, but there is a big differentiation in inexpensive food and cheap food, inexpensive wine and cheap wine. So I wanted to make sure that people really understood that we were curating for them, even at a $30 price point, and we were definitely curating at a higher price point, about finding things that they would really get into. But if I can pour a Esprit de Beaucastel or Esprit de Tablas from 15 years ago and have people get on the wine list because of it, then I've won. To me, that's totally cool. Or, to have customers be like, hey, can you get with Jason on a tour? It's like, that's the type of thing where it's like, we're going to have long-term customers based on that authentic interaction with people and that knowledge base that we're seeking.
I absolutely. And I think that's for me the sign of a really good wine program is that it's not something that is like wine's greatest hits that people already
Right.
know, but nor is it like how esoteric and bizarre can I make this so that people don't know what to do and I can sort of show off how much I know.
And
It's
there's a
like
lot of
that.
orange wine lists right now that are a little perplexing,
Yeah,
where,
but
and I understand it. It's in vogue and it's cool. And there are some gems in that category, but there's a lot of plonk too. And, just because you can write pet nat on a label doesn't mean it's good. So, you need to you need to have a vision for your program. I mean, our program is smaller California estates that do much more European style wines, lower ABV wines. But then we're totally in love with Burgundy. We're totally in love with Piedmont. We love Rieslings. I love Alsace. So all these things come into play, but I love those things because they work with the food I make.
yeah.
And I think that the making sure that link is always there is really important.
And the giving people the confidence to choose the things that they don't already know that they like. I feel like that's that's the bridge that separates a good wine program from a great wine program, is that the great wine programs have all of these fascinating wines with great stories and give people the tools to get that first step onto that ledge that allows them to discover that story, encourages them to discover that story.
Yeah, exactly. There's some cool people watching. Mallard Cotter Chef. That's my
Yep.
friend Todd Perrin. He's in Newfoundland.
So you grew up in Ottawa, right? In
I grew up in bucolic Ottawa, Canada. It's the capital. It's really boring, but it's a wonderful, wonderful city. And I went to it's amazingly cool high school right downtown. It's a public high school, and it's badass, and people from all around the world there. And I skipped a lot of school and played a lot of snooker and cooked a lot of food.
Awesome. So how did you end up in Athens?
My wife and I moved down here in 1996. I'm since divorced, but we have two lovely kids and a very amicable relationship. So we moved down here in 96. I worked here for 2 years. Then we moved to San Francisco and started Gary Danko after working at Mecca. I don't know if you remember Mecca, which is kind of a supper club on Market, uh, just bordering onto the Castro. And opened up Danko, and then got a call from a woman I'd once worked with to open up 5 and 10 in 2000. So came back and opened up here, and it was a little hard slog at the beginning, uh, but I had a vision of what I wanted to do and the food I wanted to cook, and it worked. It took a little while, and took me buying up business partners who were unhappy with making just the small amount I needed to make to get by, uh, and that was fun. But there's certain things that I just never wanted to not have happen. And I think it's really important to have the whole, like a restaurant's a kind of careful arrangement of puzzle pieces, and a wine program is an amazingly important part of it. Great beverage program, great service, and great food. And then you've got the bookends. You've got mixology at the beginning, and you've got great coffee at the end and great dessert program. So as long as we were able to hit all those notes, I could do a really community-driven restaurant that eventually won a lot of praise and accolades. And it's
Yeah.
21 years old now, which makes me feel very old.
I mean, that is absolutely, like, in legendary terms for restaurant longevity. That's a testament
Yeah,
that you
well,
created
we're
something
past
that
that.
that worked.
Everybody's like, they fail in the first 2 years, so we're past that point.
So one of the things that I didn't realize until I started doing a little bit of research for this, is I wasn't aware of the Seed Life Skills nonprofit that you created. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, my daughter Beatrice, who's now 19 and goes to the University of Toronto, but she's a wonderful kid. When she was like five or no, I guess she was older. She was 8 and 9. She had home ec, and she came back very thoroughly disappointed in her first day of home ec because they had made like little wieners rolled in croissant and baked in the oven, and it was just, and then red velvet cupcakes. I mean, that's from a cake mix. And so I got with the school superintendent, and I was like, let's do something better. So we wrote this curriculum on sort of piecemealing like food knowledge for kids down to these retainable blocks of knowledge that say, look, if you know how to roast a chicken, your life's better. You know how to make a salad dressing from scratch and roast vegetables, your life is better. How do we make these retainable skills that these people never forget? And that's how you rig the system that way by making people end up eating better, that the happy meal is no longer the go-to. And they get this sense of worth. I mean, food should be, and the ability to sustain oneself and the people around you is such an important step to giving people power and empowerment in this world. So we wrote this whole curriculum, we installed it into the local school district, but then put it online for free, and it's been downloaded like 5,000 times as a complete curriculum around the world. So it's used in a bunch of different locations, and has really, I think, done a really good thing. It's kind of dormant right now, because we did it and then we kind of backed away from it for lack of time. But it's out there and anybody can download it. And look, it's regardless of shape or size or color or economic background or place you are in the strata of society. It's like if if you know how to cook, your life's just better. I'm not out to create a whole legion of professional chefs. I'm out to create a society that can fend for itself and cook healthy food so we don't have to pay exorbitant medical costs for them to survive later on in life. And so when they get to 18, 19, 20, the most difficult time in your life in a lot of ways, they get to say these three magic words: I got this. That's it. It's like if you can make a great salad for dinner and steam rice and roast chicken thighs, it's like I can make you dinner two times for $5 for four people on those ingredients. So there's no excuse for us to be constantly shoving crap into our gullets in this North American society just because we've lost some of the basic core skills of living.
I love it. I love it. How do people who maybe hadn't heard of this, how do they find where they download it? What's the
They can go to seedlifeskills.org. I assume it's still up. I haven't checked in a while.
It's up. I checked it out.
Seedlifeskills.org. It's not with a Z, it's with an S. I'm not that kind of person. Seedlifeskills, .org. And they should be able to get it there.
Um
Oh,
so
no, they can't get it anymore. I need to figure that out.
huh,
They
it
can
was
email me
there was a link to it
or
off of
DM me.
off of your own website, off of the
Yeah, it
humanizing.com.
may.
So
I may have lost the website. I don't know. I haven't checked in about 6 months, but it's out there somewhere, or I can send it to you.
awesome. So how how has COVID, well, maybe I should say how has COVID changed your view of hospitality and the place of restaurants? And if so, how?
Yes, in a lot of ways. I mean, the biggest impact on that COVID's had is for us to do this with more heart than ever. Um, it was hard to get through. It was painful to watch this world come to a halt, and so now is the time to make sure we're paying people really well, that we're teaching people and inspiring them every day. And look, the stories of chefdom that I've seen over the years uh, that are definitely not applicable to me because I've focused on it for a really long time. I'm making sure like I walk away each day from a restaurant feeling good about the way I've treated people. And I think that's really important. But I think now more than ever, we need to figure out how we can do this properly. And that means safe environments, good pay and benefits and caring for people and teaching them. It's a hard job. So, but now it's like, I don't, chefs do not work 80 hours a week in my kitchens. There's just no point. And you know that feeling when this is the abstract magic thing with restaurants. There are restaurants that you walk into and you're like, man, everybody, this place just has it. It's like you know it when you walk in the door. Like people feel good. There's a palpable hop in people's step. Everybody's totally real and they're themselves. Everything's kind of efficient and making sense, and you feel the heart in it. People keep saying things like, well, well, come work for me. You'll be like part of my family. I have a family. I just want to treat my workers well. Okay? Just give the family thing a break. Everybody's got their own. It's enough to deal with. Um, I don't need to be your friend. I need to give you a great environment to work in and respect you and make sure that I understand what you are going through. Where is the empathy side of business? It can exist because if I empathize with people and create a good environment, they're going to stick with me longer, and I am going to get more productivity out of those people, and they will get
Totally.
more productivity out of me. I want everybody who ever works for me to ask for that letter of reference because I want to write them something that glorifies that person and what they did while they worked for me. Um, there are a couple of people out there who I would be like, no, I'm not writing that for you. And that's fine. Those people exist. Generally, like these days, I'm just like, I want people to be themselves. I'm going to give them the environment to be themselves. That's the thing. My follow up to that is if you're a dick, I don't need you here. I'm very
And
straightforward too.
And do you feel like one of the things that I have been reading a lot about, and I've been fortunate in that I haven't seen it firsthand. We've been pretty lucky, I think, at the Vineyard, is that I think people are rethinking what the relationship should be between a restaurant and a customer. I think there's been a lot of acceptance of, like, frankly, kind of abusive treatment by customers of servers at restaurants, of restaurateurs, and I think people are bringing that to light in a way that maybe hasn't been brought to light before, and maybe that's because just everybody is a little more on edge. Maybe everybody is a little more sensitive to things. Maybe it's just that everybody is um, so excited to get back out that people are overwhelming the capacity of restaurants. Do you do you feel like, have you seen that? Have you seen basically what we've seen, which is that the customers who've come out to see us have mostly just been grateful that we're open and thankful that we're able to welcome them again.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the positive side of that relationship, which is we're very, very thankful for. I think we're also really good at quickly diffusing people who we figure out may not be the most pleasant customers. And not necessarily asking them to leave, but making sure they don't have any ammo uh, to go after us with. Um, you know, your experience as a customer at a restaurant relies on us doing a good job as a restaurant, sure, but it also relies on you coming into a place of hospitality willing to be happy. Um, and so don't, if you're a potentially grumpy customer, maybe don't come in with your in-laws and your toddler, and then complain that your experience was crappy as the whole family just fought with each other. That's not my fault. Cold food is my fault. The inability to properly order is so there's some things in our control, but I think that COVID, yeah, it's kind of 50-50. Some people went off the rails even more, and other people are just so thankful. Um, but it's also, I think if you are trying, and for all the right reasons, trying to do a really good job, 99% of the people out there will see that. And but I mean really authentically trying. And that's really, I hate to say rare. I'm hoping it's more common, but there are only so many restaurants that you just really utterly feel at home in this world, and I just want to be one of them.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, our main issues. I mean, we've had so few of them. I mean, it really, I would say 99% plus of the people who we've seen since the beginning of COVID have been wonderful. The handful of interactions that I look back on with frustration are basically people who show up expecting things to be the way they always were, and yeah, no, we have to do reservations. Like, if we everybody has to have their own table, and we've only got 12 tables, like, and you show up on a Saturday at lunchtime, and like, why is there not a table waiting for me? It's like, well, there's only so
Yeah,
much I can do about this. But I do think that it has it has taught us a ton. I
yeah.
mean, we were not back inside our tasting room until about a month ago.
Wow.
For a full year, we were just serving people outside on our patio, and it was all, we went from bars where you would walk up to the bar and be like shoulder to shoulder with other people, to everybody had their own table, and we were serving wine in flights, and it was all outside. And we realized that, like, this is actually a better interaction, because people have the time and the space to focus on what it is they're there for, and they're not going to get kind of shouldered out of the way by a group of seven that just walks in just because, like, we got to find space for them. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we've tried to learn from those lessons. Now that we were able to be back in our tasting room, we turned from having walk up bars to having bar seating. So again, you can reserve your space inside or outside, but it's your space, and it's your space for the duration of your tasting. And that gives us the ability to get people inside the story and the wines in a way that we just couldn't do before because we didn't have the capacity and the time and the knowledge of who was coming and when to do it.
Yeah, I kind of regimented things in a lot of ways, I think across the board in both of our industries. So, that's been good. We took, hey, I'm in Georgia. Georgia's a lovely state that doesn't take COVID very seriously. So, we're allowed to do whatever, but we kind of refused.
Right.
And, the biggest pushback I got on, was some people not wanting to wear masks. And it's like, you know, that's nice. My grandfather died in World War II. Bye. What we ask of citizens in this world, putting on a mask is not a really difficult thing to do. So that was the biggest pushback. But we also spaced tables. We built more outside areas like you guys would have done. And we were doing it safely and smartly and really had virtually no issues. We had one support staff member get COVID. And so we shut down for like a week. But that was the only person who really got it. And that was great. We're masked up again already in Georgia here, not because we have to, but just based on CDC guidelines. That's a smart thing to do. Look, I'm Canadian. I had to go to Canada for a production that I shot up there, and I had to quarantine for 2 weeks and not leaving a condo where the government checks in on you every single day. I didn't complain once. Why are they doing it? They're trying to keep people alive.
Yeah.
So, I've got a lot of older clients too, who, would be susceptible to these things if they got COVID, and they probably wouldn't make it. So, but those were the people who were so thankful for the steps we were taking. And also, we were cooking food that just made them feel happy because it made us feel happy. It was good. We were doing service that was just good and still is, and that we're proud of. And so, I'm nothing without a great staff. They've risen to the challenge and they're amazing. And I don't have a staffing issue that everybody else has got right now, because I've got a restaurant where everybody in Athens wants to work, and because I can walk in there and talk to any person. And I'm like, "Are you happy to be here today?" And they're like, "This is great." We have a saying at the restaurant, which is, how about you make it better today than it was yesterday, even if yesterday was great, because that shows progress and advancement, and it shows that you're properly ascertaining efficiencies and technique and how to put smiles on faces in the right way, and you're making progress. Every day can get a little bit better. And if we take that and work it into the whole world or the country, we can make a lot of progress just by thinking that way. And I don't think it's overly rosy. It's not hippy dippy. It's just micromanaging and working in a positive way to make things better for your crew. As much of my crew aren't my family. Again, we've gone over this. I don't need another family. I do need a happy crew who really wants to be there. And right now, I'm just blessed with, from top to bottom, every person in 5 and 10 and Empire State South. It's just great people, good people.
Yeah, and we're in the same boat. I mean, we have lots of neighbors who are struggling to find enough people to staff their tasting rooms, and like we've been able to get the people that we need, and we keep the people who we want to keep, and it's something that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the longevity of the people who stay at Tablas Creek. We've got like the people in charge of all of our departments. The newcomer has been with us 7 years. Like
yeah,
people who've been with us 25 years and up, and that was something that my dad really believed in, and something that I've tried to continue, because I think it's so important. The people who want to be there are the people who are going to do great work.
At the end of the day, it makes your job a lot easier and everybody around you a lot happier. Because clamoring for labor in a market like this is really difficult, and I feel for people. But the first rule of staffing a good company, whatever it is you're doing, is, hey, why don't be a dick?
There you go. So, is there anything new that you have on the horizon, or anything that you started during COVID that you'd like people to know about?
Other than macrame, which I shit you not, I've been doing some macrame, or like stitching, whatever, embroidery stuff. No, I mean, I'm not really writing a book. I wrote How to Cook, which came out last year. It's done really well. It's a great book. It's kind of based around the Seed Life Skills idea. It's like, how do you take 24 blocks of technique and learn those and then be able to cook virtually anything? And it was a book to send Beatrice off to university with, or any kid off to college with. It's not primarily pointed at kids, but more like young adults but then, I've also got 50-year-old people who are like, I need that book, and that's good. So, but it looks at cooking in this, like, it's kind of like a Lego set, and each technique is a block. I just have a bigger Lego set than most people. But it just goes into, how do you make great food really efficiently at home? But that's been the beautiful thing about if we can get any beauty out of something like a pandemic, is watching people somehow succeed in quarantine is a really beautiful thing. And watching them cook from scratch, watching restaurants pivot and figure it out, watching wineries pivot and get delivery systems, and all these things coming into play that have huge ramifications on the future of our industries. Those are really good lessons to learn, and I think good things that came out of this. But yeah, I'm working on a bunch of consulting projects right now and all of that sort of stuff, which is fun. But it's also like dragging your head through gravel sometimes.
Cool. Well, I can't believe that it has already been half an hour, but it has been half an hour. Thank you so much for joining me for this. If people don't already follow you, how do they follow you? What platforms are you most active on? And obviously they should come and eat at your restaurants, but on
Yeah,
their
I'm
way
just
to that, how
on.
do they stay in touch?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, my very political. Instagram, I just do pictures of doodles and food. But it's at Hugh Acheson at both of them. But you can go to hughacheson.com as well. There's a website for that. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I can't wait to get back to Georgia and come and see you in person. But meanwhile, thank you for taking a little time out of your Wednesday to chat.
Thanks, Jason. Rock
Awesome.
on.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I will see you again in 2 weeks. And thanks again, Hugh.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.